Wait, hold the door. Whew, that was close.
Riley and I have been playing co-op games together since we were kids. Starting with the good old days of Champions Return to Arms on PS2, to the game that inspired this very channel, Sons of the Forest. We even spent years as duo partners enduring the brutal chaos of League of Legends. You could say we've seen it all. And while co-op games are still being released regularly, there's no denying the magic has faded a bit. Back then, it was all about late nights, frozen pizzas, and squeezing onto a tiny split screen. These days, that kind of experience is harder to come by, but one studio is doing its best to bring it back: Hazelight Studios. These developers have built a strong catalog that focuses solely on the co-op experience, starting with A Way Out in 2018, followed by It Takes Two in 2021, and now Split Fiction. Split Fiction is a co-op only puzzle platformer where you and a partner play as Zoe and Mio, two aspiring writers chasing their first big publishing deal. Zoe is a bubbly, whimsical fantasy author, while Mio is her total opposite, an angsty, no-nonsense sci-fi writer. The two meet at a Raider Publishing event where writers are linked into a machine that turns their story ideas into virtual reality experiences. After a little disagreement about the overall concept, a scuffle ensues, and our heroes Zoe and Mio end up in a VR pod together. The system glitches, revealing Raider's more sinister intentions. Now, these two polar opposites have to team up and journey through each other's wild stories to shut the system down. Split Fiction doesn't just ask you to play with someone, it requires it. And honestly, that's where the game really shines. The core loop of platforming, puzzle solving, and fighting off bizarre enemies all depends on constant communication and teamwork. Hazelight reinforces that connection in smart ways. The game is always split screen, even when you're playing online on separate devices, which means you and your partner are always in sync, always seeing each other's perspective. Even better, the second player can join completely free using the Friend Pass system. All they have to do is download the free version and accept an invite from someone who owns the game. It's a generous move that makes jumping in with friends easy. Once you're in, the game starts off as a fairly straightforward puzzle platformer. You and your partner follow a mostly linear mission, jumping across platforms, swinging from ropes, and solving puzzles that focus more on coordination and timing than raw brain power. It's not overly difficult, but it's designed to keep both players engaged with each other at all times. Mio and Zoe are given different, complementary abilities that change from segment to segment depending on the story world you're currently navigating. These abilities are usually simple to use, but cleverly integrated into the puzzles and platforming, making each level feel fresh and genre appropriate. When the characters are cyber ninjas, Zoe might have a laser whip, while Mio has a gravity shifter. Then you hop over into Fantasyland, and Zoe can shapeshift into a little fairy, while Mio can shapeshift into a gorilla. And while standard enemies are relatively rare, the boss fights are a major highlight. They're tightly woven into the theme of the level and the specific powers your characters have at the time. These encounters feel like set-piece moments, mixing combat, coordination, and spectacle in a way that makes them very engaging. The boss encounters are very well designed and had Riley and I shouting instructions at each other non-stop, half laughing, half panicking through the chaos. The baseline mechanics of Split Fiction are rock solid, but the real secret sauce is in the remarkable creativity of the developers. This game constantly keeps you on your toes, always throwing something new at you, and it never runs out of surprises. Some of that comes from what we've already talked about, like the ever-changing abilities that Zoe and Mio get, and how those abilities intertwine with the themes and layout of each level. But it also goes way beyond that. Split Fiction isn't afraid to break its own rules. One moment you're solving co-op platforming puzzles, and the next you're thrown into some delightfully absurd scenario you'd never expect. Sometimes these shakeups even feel like genre flips. Like when you're suddenly side-scrolling through a shooter-style sequence, or engaging in a dance battle with a monkey. Other times it's just pure chaos, like when I was trying to pass the I am not a robot test on my phone while riding on the back of a motorcycle that Riley was driving. Another time I became a ball in a pinball machine and Riley was the flippers. And just when you start thinking you've had enough of the change-up, it ends. The game zips you right back into the standard loop, never letting any one gimmick overstay its welcome. It is this creativity and willingness to go completely off track that made the game so hard to put down. Each moment is very creative, and there's this ever-present curiosity to see what happens next.
Need a weapon. How about swords? No, swords have been done. Ooh, they could wield nunchucks. Nunchucks rule.
If I had one real complaint about Split Fiction, it would be the difficulty, but not in the way you might think. It's not that the puzzles are too simple. While they're not brain breakers, they're consistently fun and do a great job of testing the coordination between you and your partner. And it's not that the combat or boss fights are pushovers either. These moments often throw bullet hell style patterns at you and require quick reflexes and teamwork to survive. The issue is with how the game handles failure, particularly during boss encounters. When one player dies, the other just needs to survive for a few seconds until their partner can mash a button and respawn. But even if both players go down, the punishment is minimal. The game doesn't reset the fight. Instead, it respawns you just a short distance behind where you were, with the boss still partially damaged and often just about as low as when you left off. This means you can die, respawn, and brute force your way through tough sections without ever needing to truly adapt or improve. It strips away the tension, the sense of stakes, and the urgency that should define these moments. And this design choice doesn't just affect boss fights. It applies to many of the game's high-tension chase and dodging sequences as well. You'll be sprinting from collapsing structures, dodging laser traps, or navigating obstacle courses that feel like they're meant to test your reflexes and coordination. But if you mess up, you're often dropped right back in, barely behind where you left off. That kind of generous checkpointing removes the fear of failure and turns what should be white-knuckle moments into mildly chaotic trial runs. You never feel like you have to get better. You can just keep trying until you coast through. That said, I do recognize that the system has its upside. If you're playing with someone less experienced, maybe a non-gamer girlfriend or a little brother, it's incredibly approachable. The game avoids frustration and keeps things moving, which makes the whole experience more inviting. It's not trying to punish players, it's trying to make sure both players enjoy the experience together. That's admirable, and I understand this approach. But if you're like Riley and I and you want to be challenged, it might feel like the stakes just never get high enough. The story in Split Fiction is surprisingly heartfelt. At its core, it's about two complete opposites, Zoe and Mio, learning to understand and support one another as they're forced to navigate each other's wildly different story worlds. As you move through these levels, it becomes clear that their writing is rooted in deeper personal experiences: grief, guilt, coping, and the need for healing. The game subtly explores these themes and ultimately the power of friendship. The writing itself can lean a little corny at times, but it's carried by some excellent voice acting, especially from our two leads. Zoe and Mio feel fully realized thanks to their performances, and their chemistry sells even the more exaggerated or comedic moments.
Really? What? I feel like we can handle any curveball Raider throws at us. Let's not get that cocky, Super Zoe.
Visually, the game is stylish and clean, with vibrant environments that shift constantly to reflect each new story segment. Whether you're wandering through a pastel fantasy forest or sprinting across a neon-drenched sci-fi factory, the visuals are always doing something fresh to match the tone. The music is just as dynamic as the visuals, constantly shifting genres to match each story world. One moment you're hearing whimsical fantasy tunes, the next it's pulsing sci-fi beats or synth-heavy action tracks. The soundtrack always feels in sync with what's happening on screen, helping sell the transitions between wildly different tones and settings. Overall, Hazelight Studios achieved exactly what it set out to do with Split Fiction: to celebrate the co-op experience and bring back that feeling so many of us had growing up. Late nights, split screens, and solving problems side by side. This game is a love letter to that era, but with a modern polish and a whole lot of imagination. What makes Split Fiction special isn't just its mechanics or even its moments of spectacle. It's the way it pulls two people into rhythm with each other. Every swing, every puzzle, every shared stumble across wildly shifting genres feels like a conversation. The game hands you tools and says figure it out together. One second you're casting magic across floating ruins, the next you're dodging lasers in a sci-fi hellscape, or laughing your way through some absurd challenge no other game would dare to include. And through it all, something subtle happens. You stop thinking about my side and your side, and start thinking like a unit, like a team. That's the quiet magic of Split Fiction. It doesn't just allow co-op play, it requires trust, timing, and a willingness to be just a little ridiculous together. In the end, Split Fiction isn't just a good co-op game. It's a reminder of how meaningful shared play can be. And in an industry where local co-op is becoming more and more rare, that alone makes it something special.
I'm Zoe, by the way. Mio.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe to support us. And until next time, cheers.